This would be the finals.
They said that we had to have it, and they said they would turn people away, probably.
Now, ruling out foul play, the police said it was not clear who died first after the two were discovered.
Adan Mendoza, sheriff for Santa Fe, New Mexico, Santa Fe County.
A cloud of suspicion surrounds the deaths of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife.
When FBI agents stormed a luxury financial firm in Manhattan, they expected to arrest a man accused of massive fraud. But his office was empty. Desks wiped clean, computers gone, not a single trace left behind. At the center of it all, a missing $80 million fortune tied to legendary actor Gene Hackman, and a will that cut out his entire family. What started as a routine investigation quickly unraveled into one of the most shocking inheritance scandals Hollywood has ever seen. And the deeper they dug, the darker it got. Before we dive into the labyrinth of offshore accounts and secret will amendments, understand this. Gene Hackman was a Hollywood icon. From tough guy roles in the 1970s to Academy Award-winning performances, he had etched his name into cinematic history. Yet, for all his fame and respect in the industry, the final chapter of his life would become a cautionary tale. One so drenched in mystery and betrayal that it would leave his children battling not just for an inheritance, but for truth itself. Even stranger, Hackman's entire family discovered they had been cut out of his will, every single one of them. Not a cent of that $80 million fortune was headed their way. Instead, every last dollar had been funneled into a trust no one had ever heard of, controlled by individuals no one could identify. As if that weren't enough, the sudden disappearance of Hackman's longtime financial advisor triggered a rapid chain of events that would send federal investigators racing across continents. Let's step back for a moment to when this nightmare truly began. Whitmore, a man famed for his impeccable record of turning celebrity bank accounts into lucrative gold mines, had been with Hackman for years. To the outside world, their partnership seemed ironclad, an aging actor and his deeply trusted money man. But in truth, cracks had started to form when rumors began circulating about Hackman's declining mental faculties. Close friends whispered about confusion and forgetfulness in his final months. Some said it was just old age. Others hinted at something more serious, an Alzheimer's diagnosis that was kept out of the public eye. Hackman's children, grown and living their own lives, couldn't have guessed what was brewing behind the scenes. They had no idea their father was signing new legal documents, no clue that his signature was appearing on forms that would one day deny them any piece of his estate. By the time they realized Whitmore might be overstepping his professional boundaries, it was far too late. Within days of Hackman's death, everything came crashing down. A reading of the will showed that Hackman's 3 children were set to inherit exactly nothing. The entire estate, every award, every investment, every precious memory, was funneled into a labyrinthine trust that offered no transparency. Even more shocking was the timing. The trust had been created only weeks before Hackman's passing, right when his mental condition was at its worst. Hackman's wife, Betsy Arakawa, had passed away just a week before him under circumstances that, at least initially, raised no immediate questions. Yet a bizarre clause in Betsy's own will stated that Hackman had to outlive her by a full 90 days to inherit any of her assets. Because he lived only a single week past her, none of her fortune moved to him, and thus none of it could later pass to the children. This left the entire Hackman estate vulnerable, essentially up for grabs to whomever controlled the trust. Even from the outset, the story was big news. Hackman's kids disinherited, plastered across gossip columns. But as the media frenzy intensified, the real question emerged: where was the money now? Forensic accountants stepped in, tracing the flow of funds through multiple shell companies, each more impenetrable than the last. Their initial findings? Someone had been draining Hackman's fortune months before his death. Small amounts at first, cleverly kept under threshold levels that might trigger suspicion, but those small sums snowballed. By the time Hackman passed, the trust itself was tapped out, holding nothing but a few scattered assets of negligible value. Hackman's wife, Betsy Arakawa, had passed away just a week before him under circumstances that, at least initially, raised no immediate questions. Yet a bizarre clause in Betsy's own will stated that Hackman had to outlive her by a full 90 days to inherit any of her assets. Because he lived only a single week past her, none of her fortune moved to him, and thus none of it could later pass to the children. This left the entire Hackman estate vulnerable, essentially up for grabs to whomever controlled the trust. Even from the outset, the story was big news. Hackman's kids disinherited, plastered across gossip columns. But as the media frenzy intensified, the real question emerged: where was the money now? Forensic accountants stepped in, tracing the flow of funds through multiple shell companies, each more impenetrable than the last. Their initial findings? Someone had been draining Hackman's fortune months before his death. Small amounts at first, cleverly kept under threshold levels that might trigger suspicion, but those small sums snowballed. By the time Hackman passed, the trust itself was tapped out, holding nothing but a few scattered assets of negligible value. But the scandal was just getting started. A key witness, a junior associate in Whitmore's firm who had begun cooperating with the authorities, also vanished. Everything in the associate's apartment was left untouched, as if they'd stepped outside for a moment and never returned. The FBI discovered the place was not ransacked, no signs of a fight, simply abandoned. That was the moment everyone realized. This heist was bigger than just one cunning financial advisor. An entire network was at work. In the days that followed, an anonymous tip led authorities to a hidden file on Whitmore's personal cloud server, a ledger listing dozens of high-profile names, from Hollywood elites to business tycoons, politicians, and beyond. Each name was followed by complex notes about their assets, potential vulnerabilities, and estimated gains, a euphemism for how much the group could siphon from unsuspecting victims. Hackman's name was simply one entry among many, albeit one of the largest single windfalls at $80 million. The final pages of that ledger mentioned steps for forging legal documents, grooming personal staff to keep the star isolated, and controlling external access. The entire script read like a how-to manual for systematically looting a fortune from people nearing the end of their lives or struggling with reduced mental capacity. It became clear we were dealing with an organized crime ring that specialized in infiltrating the financial affairs of celebrities and moguls under the guise of trustworthy advisement. This ring had the resources and the nerve to orchestrate the total disappearance of funds and occasionally the disappearance of key people who knew too much. The specialized skill set needed to crack robust legal frameworks, navigate tax havens, and scrub personal data indicated a well-oiled machine, not just a collection of small-time grifters. As the hunt for Whitmore intensified, the FBI's frustration mounted. Investigators kept hitting dead ends. Every attempt to locate him in standard financial channels failed because the ring's money movements were anything but standard. They used cryptocurrency mixers, shell entities registered under false identities in nations with minimal banking regulations, and an entire library of advanced hacking tools to keep themselves in the shadows. Just when the case seemed ready to stall, a breakthrough arrived. Tracing newly discovered IP addresses from the ledger's hidden data, a specialized cyber unit tracked suspicious connections to a remote property in the Caymans. An operation was planned. Yet, by the time agents landed, they found only a deserted villa, the pool water still rippling from what looked like a recent departure. It was as though the criminals were always one step ahead. Meanwhile, media attention shifted from simple sensationalism, actors' fortune vanishes, to broader questions about elder abuse, exploitation, and the responsibility of the entertainment industry to protect its stars. Hackman's children filed lawsuits not just against Whitmore, but also against the estate attorneys and the trust's overseers, alleging they must have known something was off. Litigation exploded as each party pointed fingers, deflecting blame and claiming ignorance. It was during this legal chaos that a name emerged from Hackman's past, an old friend turned confidant. Everyone had assumed this friend to be a harmless companion, but newly unearthed emails hinted at a deeper, more sinister involvement. Investigators discovered payment logs that seemed to connect this friend to suspicious wire transfers, all leading to the same shell corporation that was tied back to the trust. Initially, it seemed unimaginable. Could a personal friend have helped Whitmore manipulate an ailing Hackman into signing away his entire fortune? But the evidence didn't lie. If anything, it opened a new question. Were there still others out there who had played a role? And then came the flight logs. The FBI realized that months before Hackman's death, Whitmore and this so-called friend had flown together to an obscure location in Montenegro, known among certain circles for its loose financial oversight. Transactions from that period suggested this was where the final touches of the scheme took place. Additional calls were made to numerous overseas banks, effectively locking in place the series of transfers that would siphon away Hackman's fortune for good. The entire saga took a darker turn when unverified claims emerged that Hackman might not have died from natural causes. Online conspiracy theories erupted, insinuating everything from subtle poison to hush-hush palliative care that hastened his end. Law enforcement, for their part, found no concrete evidence supporting foul play in Hackman's death, but the speculation alone was enough to keep tabloids in overdrive and the public enthralled. Hackman's children, now under intense media scrutiny, continued to push forward with their investigations. They hired private detectives, forensic document examiners, and personal security. Death threats arrived in their inboxes. Stalkers appeared around their homes. Someone wanted them silent. Fearful but determined, they released a public statement. "Our father deserved better. We won't rest until we know the full truth." That rallying cry galvanized fans worldwide, intensifying pressure on law enforcement to deliver answers. International bodies like Interpol and even Europol joined the pursuit when the scale of the scheme became evident. More celebrities, some still alive, some deceased, were confirmed targets. A few had only narrowly avoided losing their estates because of suspicious family members who intervened just in time. Others, lacking the necessary vigilance or connections, lost everything with little hope of recovery. The ring's hallmark strategy: identify wealthy individuals with minimal oversight, single, divorced, or estranged from family, and exploit them at the right moment. Finally, a stroke of luck. A mid-level accountant within the ring decided to flip, handing over a trove of encrypted messages that fingered a top-tier suspect as the mastermind. This person was rumored to be a legal expert with a chameleon-like ability to forge official documents and restructure wills. So far, they'd stayed out of the spotlight, letting Whitmore take the public blame. Thanks to the turncoat accountant, authorities zeroed in on a lavish property in Monaco. What happened next made headlines around the globe: a multi-agency raid on the Monaco estate. At dawn, tactical teams breached gates adorned with gold filigree. Inside, the suspect who greeted them was hardly surprised. In fact, they seemed amused, as if expecting the intrusion. Investigators found a maze of hidden rooms filled with encrypted computers, forging equipment, and documents detailing the finances of dozens of unsuspecting celebrities. The smug confidence on the suspect's face said it all. They believed they'd covered every track, that no one could truly pin a crime on them, except the evidence was overwhelming. Files detailing how to exploit various celebrities' vulnerabilities, from mental health struggles to family feuds, lay stacked in a steel safe. Investigators discovered entire sections dedicated to forging signatures by analyzing old autographs. Even more audacious, the suspect kept a diary of sorts, noting personal encounters with various stars, including times when they were most pliable to suggestion. Hackman's file was heartbreakingly thorough, listing every known medical ailment, the approximate timeline of his cognitive decline, and recommended angles for ensuring he signed away his estate. Meanwhile, investigators tracking Whitmore's digital footprint finally located him in a secluded coastal region of Brazil. He lived in a modest, well-guarded compound. Far from living a luxurious life of his own, he appeared paranoid, constantly looking over his shoulder. Local authorities and the FBI swooped in, capturing him without a fight. Yet even in handcuffs, Whitmore insisted he was just an employee, that the real puppet master had manipulated him too. Back on US soil, a courtroom spectacle ensued. The public devoured the day-by-day coverage of the trial. Hackman's children took the stand, describing the heartbreak of discovering their father had been swindled in his final days. Forensic experts testified about the advanced forging techniques and sophisticated network of shell corporations. The prosecution laid out email chains detailing the elaborate plan to isolate Hackman, rewrite his estate documents, and funnel money overseas. Ultimately, convictions followed. Whitmore cooperated to earn a reduced sentence, detailing the entire ring's operation. The alleged mastermind was handed a lengthy prison term, though some contended the punishment barely matched the magnitude of the crime. A portion of Hackman's money was recovered, mostly from liquidated real estate, but the lion's share had been laundered and spent. The complexity of international finance laws and the ring's elaborate cover-ups guaranteed that most of the stolen fortune would never resurface. Still, the outcome offered a grim sense of closure. Hackman's children, forever shaken, found themselves not just mourning their father's loss, but grappling with a justice system that moves slowly when up against cunning criminals. Their biggest solace was public support. Hackman fans rallied behind them, decrying elder exploitation and demanding greater protections for aging celebrities. But in some corners, new rumors bubbled. Was this ring truly dismantled, or did remnants still lurk in the shadows, waiting for the next target? Many believed additional conspirators escaped during the Monaco raid, carrying with them the ring's tactics, contacts, and wealth. Others pointed to unsolved vanishings of other wealthy estate holders that bore eerie resemblances to Hackman's case. The question on everyone's mind: if they could steal from an American film legend so easily, who else might be at risk? In the end, The Hackman scandal became a cautionary tale. For Hollywood insiders, it was a stark reminder that even the most lauded stars can fall prey to unscrupulous manipulators. For families everywhere, it underscored the need for vigilance when elderly loved ones grow vulnerable, especially if large sums of money are at stake. And for law enforcement, it served as a wake-up call. The fight against sophisticated financial crimes, especially those operating on an international scale, is an uphill battle that requires unwavering dedication, vast resources, and the cooperation of multiple global jurisdictions. So, what is the final takeaway? Even though the mastermind is behind bars and Whitmore awaits his fate, much of Gene Hackman's fortune remains unaccounted for, forever interwoven into the dark tapestry of international white-collar crime. His children will never see the bulk of those $80 million again. Perhaps more tragically, they'll never get back the final months they might have spent with him, untainted by legal battles and suspicions. So what do you think? Could this happen to other stars? Could it happen to anyone with enough money and insufficient safeguards? Let us know your thoughts below. And if you want more investigations into the deep underbelly of Hollywood's hidden scandals, stay tuned. Because in a world where deception meets ambition, there's always another twist waiting in the shadows. In the aftermath, Hollywood reeled from the scandal, and demands for industry reform grew louder. Financial consultants for major studios and A-list stars were now under intense scrutiny. Nobody wanted to be the next Gene Hackman, lured into a false sense of security, only to be blindsided by a cunning partner. High-profile attorneys began drafting new guidelines for estate management, urging clients to involve multiple checks and balances to guard against potential fraud. In a city that thrives on big breaks and bigger secrets, Hackman's story served as a neon warning sign. Because in Hollywood, what's on camera is just the polished facade. The real plots, brimming with heartbreak and betrayal, often unfold behind locked doors and encrypted files. And once you peer behind that velvet curtain, you might find that no star, no matter how revered, is truly beyond the reach of greed. Remember to like and subscribe before you're next.